career.
I do want to address one sort of caveat for that. When you're talking about, incident response, you're working for companies, forensics investigator, you're usually working for the government. As Ken kind of alluded to when he was talking about sort of a day in the life and busting, like a child pornography sort of situation. Being a forensic investigator, especially for law enforcement or for the government, is not for the faint at heart.
Yes.
You're gonna see and you're gonna interact with a lot of really, really unfortunate and terrible things. That's it's law enforcement in general is going to have that, but as a forensics investigator whose job is to find evidence of digital crime, you're going to go into that with the awareness that this is not always going to be sort of a mentally easy job to do. A lot of programs, for example, the FBI sets up rotations for their investigators so that they don't work specific subjects for too long or for a period of time that becomes too damaging to them. But that's something that, especially when you start to pursue that career and you're making the decision of public or private sector, one of the major considerations is going to need to be, how willing are you to handle very intense content like that?
Yes. And as Joe had mentioned, it's not just the child porn aspect. There's a lot of things that you may be exposed to. So yeah, definitely prepare yourself. And talk to a lot of federal agents are willing to talk to you. So if you mention hey, I'm kind of interested in this, reach out to your local office of wherever you want to work, and just say, hey, I'm kind of interested in this, but I'd like to talk to some of your agents that work, for that particular department, and I just want to kind of ping some things off them, so I can prepare myself better and see if this is really for me. So yeah, going with what Joe said, you kind of want to make sure that it's really something you're able to commit to and able to handle from that aspect. So. If you don't find, and we'll kind of get somewhat philosophical here, I guess, but if you don't find that you're kind of sort of mentally strong right now, you may want to kind of cut your teeth in private sector on incident response, SOC analysts and stuff, and then from there, if you're I really still want to be a forensic investigator with law enforcement, then from there start talking to individuals working in that capacity and just kind of bounce the information off them, see the things that they see what advice they have, and see if it's really, really something you want to do. Because you kind of have to be committed. It's a lifestyle. It's not just a job.
Absolutely.
So I know I talked for a long time there, so I kind of hopefully I didn't cut into Joe's pen testing stuff too much.
Not at all. I realized as you were doing that we structured these slides poorly. You have the whole middle of the class, and yes. I've got it real easy. Take a nap in the middle if I wasn't on camera, or even if I am, I sleep with my eyes open. All right, so on that slightly sobering note, we're going to jump back into this, get a little bit more upbeat. Offensive security and pen testing. Now this is the part of the course that I know a lot of people showed up for.
Yes.
And I don't want to disappoint you on it, but I need to tell you that pen testing is not, offensive security is not the sort of hacking you see in movies.
Wait
a lot
of
people know that sort of.
Wait a minute, Joe. So you're telling me that there's no when I start hacking on my computer, there's no flashy lights and flashy neon lights or anything?
Not unless you listen to a lot of K-pop.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's very disappointing. and a lot of people know that intellectually, and a lot of people are kind of listening. It's I know it's not like what it is in the movies, but it is very not like what it looks like in the movies. The best thing, I often compare, I've done a lot of pen testing work, and I often compare offensive security to more if you really like crossword puzzles, it's probably a great field for you to get into, where looking for one piece of relevant information in a giant stack of data. Trying to figure out how things fit together without all of the information or with someone being intentionally, willfully obtuse. It's a fun field and it can be very rewarding, and at times you do get to do kind of the really cool, breaking into systems, but the job is much more sort of puzzling, Rubik's Cube style sort of operation than it is, Sneakers or Black Hat. Black Hat, personally, I'm going to take just a second. Black Hat upsets me. Because Black Hat has conditioned the public to think that hackers look like Chris Hemsworth.
Don't they?
Which means that when they meet me, it is a very disappointing day. So Chris Hemsworth, I'm coming for you. We got a problem. Anyway, back to the course. That was just a little rant of mine. Offensive security and pen testing. So what do you actually do? What are you responsible for? You're responsible for identifying gaps and vulnerabilities by emulating to be the bad guy. You hear often about red teams, and that's kind of what we're talking about. The idea is that you learn the methodologies, the tools, the techniques, the procedures of threat actors, be they, every range from nation state to script kiddie. But you learn how they operate, and you learn how to use their tools, and then you emulate their behaviors against your own systems or against systems that you're hired or sort of tasked with analyzing. The goal here is to find the gaps, the security gaps and vulnerabilities, that threat actors would find, but in a comparatively safe way, right? If you get into the system, you're not going to dump all the client data. You're just going to write a note about it, send up a report, and hopefully be able to implement some protections against that. So you're going to be performing security analysis against anything, depending on where you are in your career and sort of what kind of pen tester you are. It could be anything from small nonprofits to multinational corporations. One of the pieces of advice I give to a lot of people, I have a lot of people kind of come to me like, how do I get in the field? How do I become a hacker? One of the best pieces of advice I can give you is to volunteer your time with nonprofits and help them set up secure systems. When we're talking about, whether it's some specific charity you like, whether it's your local church, whether it's, some weird sort of niche, like if you really love underwater basket weaving and you want to help the Underwater Basket Weavers Association of America make sure that their client data is not going to be stolen. What's great about that is it's going to give you the experience in a relatively low-stakes environment, and you're going to get the chance to work with a system which, first of all, for a nonprofit, usually is an absolute mess. Second, isn't generally going to be well documented, isn't going to follow lots of procedures, so you're going to get the opportunity to see a lot of the things you're going to see as a pen tester, and it's not sort of the trite sort of fake lab example you're going to get. We have excellent practice labs here on Cybrary, and we have real-world emulations, but there's just a certain element of realism to working with an organization that is not trying to help you succeed and often doesn't really understand what you're doing. So that's a great, it's a great way to start in the field. It's a piece of advice I give to everybody is start small, find somebody, find a nonprofit, find some small organization that could use your help. And then when you're actually doing it, when you're performing these security analyses, you're not just going to be using technical. It's a combination of technical and social approaches. So you always hear about sort of the social engineers, the people who talk their way into the building. When you're a pen tester, that's a component of your job. Being able to, talk smooth, or being able to, use whatever your personal social style is to gain access to the information you want. You may not be, Aaron Eckert, or you may not be Will Smith. What matters is your ability to use your own personality and to make that an effective way of gaining access to a system. Which I think might be why hackers are depicted as looking like Chris Hemsworth, because everyone feels a little bit better saying, oh, I gave all my data, that guy. Anyway, really, I'm stuck on that today, I guess. But yeah, so you're going to use a combination of technical and social approaches to try and achieve this goal. So what do you need to know? What do you need to be able to do? Well, we switched it up a little bit this time. Instead of reporting communication, it's communication and reporting.
Aha, trick you guys.
Yeah, bam, messed with your heads. But the point stands. You have to be able to communicate, as always, as we've hammered into you. If there's one thing you take away from this entire course, it should be communication and reporting. From there, you also want to be familiar with operating systems, network protocols, engineering, the way systems are set up, the way people construct networks. You want to know about vulnerabilities that exist, as well as how to develop new vulnerabilities. You want to know how to identify a potential vulnerability. Even if a CVE doesn't already exist for it, even if it's not already documented somewhere, if you look at a system, you want to be able to say, oh, this is what that vulnerability looks like. This is how I develop it into something substantial. So it's very important to be able to do that. And then again, social engineering, like I talked about, whether your style is, dressing up in a suit and pretending to be an executive, or whether it's, meeting somebody in the smoke pit and just following them back into the building, which, by the way, works like 90% of the time. It's all about your own personal style, but it's about getting the information from people without resorting to technical solutions. And then, of course, because you're testing against security standards, you want to know what they are. You want to be able to help people remediate and fix the problems that you identify.